Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the evidence that supports evolution. Now, we've started this a little bit already with the fossil record because that was kind of the first piece of evidence for the theory of evolution. But this one we're going to go into some of the more modern ones that we've kind of come along with some new terminology and things like that. One of the first things I want to point out here, remember, this is evidence to support the theory of evolution. Evolution stating that species change over time, right? Eventually, that species can change into a new species, all right? Another thing, but it's our change in a species due to natural selection. Remember, these organisms, like a lot of misconception is that they adapt to a certain environment, that they want to change in a direction, and that is not the case. It is based on conditions such as like mutations, that if an organism is best suited for an environment, it's more likely to survive, reproduce, and carry on that trait. So sometimes in a population, kind of the weirdo with the weird new trait, if it gives them an advantage on gathering food or shelter, he's more likely to survive and pass that weird trait down to his kids. And that keeps happening enough, that trait is going to become more and more popular, and then you will eventually see most of the population have that trait. That is evolution, the idea of changing in species because they have some sort of beneficial trait to be able to reproduce. So we're going to do evidence that, according to the theory of evolution, things we should find if that is true, that if we have a common ancestor to another species and you go backwards in time, pretty much every species on the planet should have a common ancestor. Granted, one that looks nothing like us and one that is very, very, very old, but we all branch from that same tree of life. So we're just going to talk about some of it right here in here. All right. So let's see how this goes. Okay. Oh, too much. There we go. All right, so the first one I want to talk about, recapping, is about fossil records. I'm going to recap real fast on this one because we've already done this. All right, we've talked about how we can have different layers of strata, right? If this is our fossil record here, all right, we have different layers of strata. We know that the oldest or the youngest is on top and the oldest is on the bottom. All right. And depending on how we find those fossils, we can kind of start filling in a little bit of a narrative, a little bit of a story. And especially if you start looking at structures on them. So in here, we have a very, very old, down at the bottom here, we have a very, very old quadruped that has very distinct features. But over time, we see that the fossil records in that same area, just slight changes as it now becomes three-fingered, and then those three fingers become a little bit stockier together, and then it gets kind of fused into one, and then that fused one becomes a little bit larger. All right, so we start filling in the story here. We did the same thing from the video when they talked about whales. All right, in this case, it's going this way. All right, where we believe that whales are common ancestor with things like hippos and things like that because they share a lot of bone structures. They're not, as they said in the video, whales did not evolve from hippos or vice versa. They share a common ancestor. Think of those collaterograms. All right, they share a common ancestor, and they do that because they see these slight changes in the structures. The fact that right here, right, we actually see a hip bones in a whale. Why would they have hip bones? Right. This is what we call, why would a whale have a hip bone? This is something called a vestigial structure. This is called a vestigial structure. This is a structure that we don't currently, or any organism has, but does not currently use. All right. So like hip bones in a whale, wisdom teeth, right? We don't need wisdom teeth. That's why we remove them, because they actually can be quite painful. But perhaps a common ancestor has needed extra layer of molars to help grind food. But because of our head and our shape and our jawline has actually gotten smaller over human evolution, we don't have as much room for those. And so we don't need those teeth anymore. A lot of people believe that the spleen is a gallbladder because it contains enzymes that helps digest raw meat, but we don't eat raw meat. But maybe a common ancestor, or maybe an ancestor of ours did. All right. So vestigial structures are structures that we don't need, but we have, which indicates that maybe an ancestor of ours needed them, and there's just almost kind of a leftover. So we've already talked a little bit about fossil records, although I'm bringing up this new term, vestigial structures we have but no longer in need, indicating an evolutionary. And I'll probably bring them up again as we talk about the next part here. And this next part being comparative anatomy. So this is when we start talking about different structures when we talk about within different organisms. And they talked a little bit about this a little bit in the video. In this example here, this top part here, where we see human, bat, porpoise, frog, and horse, although they are all very different structures, they're used for different things. Hands for grabbing things, and wings for the bat, porpoise for swimming, horse for more advanced running. They all share a very similar bone structure, right? They all share very similar bone structure, which is a little weird. So these are what we call homologous structures. All right, these are called homologous structures. These are structures that are used for different things, but have very similar structures, or bone structure in this case here, or you notice that we have obviously fingers, forearm, and an upper arm. Well, those bones are also found in a horse, found in a porpoise, in a bat. You can even the bat wing look, especially here's our upper arm, there's the forearm, and here's the finger bones. All right, that looks very much like a human bone. All right, our arm, and it's because that the idea is being that we are coming from a common ancestor. So if we were looking at this like as on a cladogram, at some point, in evolution, we'd have that node, and we have a breaking of the family tree where one side we might have humans, right? Bats, porpoise, frog. All right. But right here, we have a common ancestor, an ancestor that had that same upper arm, forearm, fingers, bone structure, and it just diverted in different directions just because of those 5 fingers of evolution. Maybe one population, it was more beneficial to be able to run really well, like a horse, or where being smaller and thinner to be able to fly was an advantage, so on and so forth. So these are homologous structures, different organisms, different structures that share similar features. Another part of comparative anatomy, I said I would talk about it again, is like I said, vestigial structures. I'm not going to talk too much about it again because I just talked about it. Vestigial structures are structures that we have but no longer need, like the hip bones in a whale. All right. Going with the same thing with comparative anatomy, because it's one of the easier ones we get to talk about, because it's mostly just observation. We've been able to do comparative anatomy since we've been able to find bones. Is kind of almost the reverse of homologous structures. These are what we call analogous structures. So you notice that we have the wing here of a moth, all right, a dinosaur wing, a bat wing, and a wing of a bird, all right. They all do the same function, all right, but they are not very similar in how they do it. I mean, just take a look at the the wing of the moth here. All right, it does not look in the same structure and style as the bat wing. We just talked about the bat wing actually looks more closely to the human hand. All right, ideally that we have a very recent common ancestor with the bat, but probably a much distant relative with the moth. This is what we call analogous structures. It's an O. Like I said, this is kind of the opposite of homologous structures. These are structures that all do the same function, but they are not closely related to each other because they have very different structures. All right. The structure of the dinosaur wing does not look like that of the bat wing. They do not look the same, although they both do the same function. They both fly. All right. Another example. This is the anteater, right? The anteater, the armadillo. Sorry, I'm in the way. All right. Found all over the world. They all look very similar to each other, and it's because they all do kind of the same thing. They eat insects out of the ground and pull them out of like logs and underneath rocks. So they all do kind of the same thing. So they have very similar structures, although actually they are not very closely related to each other. And so this is kind of almost the opposite thing. This is more of what we would consider divergent evolution. All right. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. It's convergent evolution because we have different species kind of evolving towards, wings. Although they are very differently related to start. All right. While on our previous slide here, where we had, different species, these different species here, who were all very similar. All very similar from a common ancestor and evolved in different directions, like having a wing, a flipper, and a hand. This is divergent evolution, right? Oops. Okay, come on. And this would be convergent evolution because they are kind of coming together. Convergent evolution. Okay. All right. So that's comparative anatomy. Homologous structures, analogous structures, vestigial structures. These are all things that we can notice with different species. So let's talk about biochemistry. All right. And in the video, they talked about this in terms of DNA. Very, very important part of the biochemistry. All right. Basically, what this just says is that organisms that are more closely related, their chemistry is the same. All right. It's very interesting that all living things are made up of DNA, and everyone's DNA is made up of the same atoms, carbons, hydrogens, oxygens, nitrogens. All of those make up DNA, and every living organism has carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. That DNA is more similar to those organisms that are more closely related. This makes sense. You have more similar DNA than to your brother than probably the person down the street because you're more closely related. Now let's zoom back and look at that in terms of a species. All right. So this chart here on the bottom talks about the number of amino acids that make up an enzyme called cytochrome C. Right? We remember that proteins, or that DNA codes to make proteins, and then proteins are made up of a chain of amino acids. All right. You notice when we look at our chain of amino acids, right? Some organisms have a very similar chain of amino acids. Like the human and the gorilla have very similar. There's only one difference. That means their DNA is probably similar, and the reason why they're similar DNA is because they probably have a more common ancestor. Humans and chimpanzees for the hemoglobin is right on, while a human and a zebra are very different, which indicates that there's probably a much further back common ancestor. For cytochrome C, you can see we are much more closely related to chimpanzees and rhesus monkeys, than we are to pigeons, than we are to, flies. We are related to them, but just much further back, much farther away from each other on the cladogram or the phylogenetic tree. All right, so we're all made up of DNA, organisms that have more similar DNA are probably more closely related to each other. All right, that's a pretty common one. And we know more about that since we have a better understanding of DNA and being able to track DNA or codes. All right, I'm going to put myself over here for this one. So this one here is about when we look at embryos. Embryology is the study of embryos. It's after we become a zygote, we develop those first few cells, we start becoming an embryo, right? So what we have here, all right, I have the embryos of 8 different species here, all right? Now, when we get all the way down here, and it gets, as time goes on, they start to develop more and more into the species. And you notice that later in time, it can be a little bit more obvious, right? That this one's a turtle, all right? This one's a fish, all right? This one's the human, all right? This one's a pig. So they're all pretty obvious when they're down there as a chicken. But notice at the very early signs, it's very hard to tell the difference between the turtle and the human. If I just gave you these, it'd be hard to tell. The fact that we actually have webbed feet at this point, right here, we have little hand buds, and the little fingers that are starting to develop, they're webbed. Now, what we do have is an enzyme or a gene that tells the enzyme to eat that skin away, basically, and so it, creates the individual fingers. While chickens and ducks and things like that, they don't have that enzyme. The idea being that the reason why all these embryos of all these different reptiles, amphibians, birds, humans, animals look similar to each other is because we all share a common ancestor, and we've all kind of diverged from that common ancestor to make slight differences, but we all kind of start in the same spot, which means maybe there was a common ancestor that looked a lot like these, and we've just kind of evolved in different directions given the conditions, right? So yeah, so in the end here, right, I have a salamander, I have the chicken, pig, the cow, the rabbit, the human. It's much easier to see them as time goes on, but we all share a very similar process early on in the embryo, as an embryo, which may give evidence to the idea that maybe we all came from a common ancestor that was very similar to this, and we've diverged in different directions. Okay, so that's the 4 pieces of evidence that I'm going to talk about evolution there. Let's see if I can get all the way back here. All right. Obviously, the fossil record, which I spent a lot of time talking about. Comparative anatomy, talking about the different types of structures. Biochemistry, especially talking about DNA, which we know makes proteins, which proteins do the work. And then comparative embryology, similar embryo. There's more evidence, but these are kind of the big 4. All right. I hope that helps. If you need to go back and look through it a little bit, if you didn't write down some of the notes, terms like analogous structure, homologous structure, go back and watch the video again. Otherwise, or make sure you ask, or if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to message me or anything like that. Otherwise, good luck, and may the science be with you.